Good morning and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. My name is Keaton Shah, and wherever you are this morning, thank you for joining us, because we know that across the country, though everyone was alert last night considering the impending inclement weather, in some parts that did not happen. In some parts it was horrible. We hope that everybody is okay and safe this morning. Alongside me is my co-host and colleague, and I've placed him in the hot seat this morning. Yesterday I was in the hot seat, so we're switching it up a bit. Mr. Sean Michael Small. I see the look on your face, Sean.
No, this seat is very cool. Very, very cool. That's why I prefer this seat.
Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Keaton.
How was the weather last night by you?
I think it generally held a nice temperature. It didn't rain too much, if my memory is correct, unless it was raining while I was sleeping. And but it stayed cool, which was nice because I had stuff to do. So rather than be too hot, even at nighttime in the valley where I am, it could get a bit warm sometimes. It was cool for most of the time, not all of the time. And yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised this morning at how nice and cool it was. I guess, for people who are frustrated or had enough of hot sun, overcast clouds at the very least is the preferred weather, I would say.
I actually, I was hoping for some rain last night. Not heavy rains to, of course, lead to any sort of destruction, such as flooding.
Yeah.
Mind you, in Trinidad, the slightest drizzle can cause the biggest flood. That's just how things are.
Who knows, there might be some area unreported that we don't know about.
Well, actually, I was taking a look at various news outlets, and there are areas, mostly in central and south parts of Trinidad, that are experiencing flooding. In fact, Tobago was hit pretty bad yesterday. I think as of 1 p.m. schools had closed. So that was, the Tobago got it really bad. But out in Grenada, interestingly, Grenada was clear. From what I heard, it was bright, burning sun. And then Guyana, well, the weather system seemed to have been more southern Caribbean than anything else, because Guyana had a bit of rain yesterday. It seems to have not affected the ongoing CPL tournament that's taking place there right now. But as I said, wherever you are this morning, well, thank you for joining us, and we hope that you're safe. Now, all this talk, we heard from the Minister of Local Government, Faraz Arawi. There's one thing you can say, that how generally his communication as Minister of Local Government has been okay. It has been okay. He's been a bit more proactive, sending out media releases, stating that all ministers of the relevant services are on standby, such as national security, public utilities. So for the most part, you can say that's fine. But I always question our level of preparedness for any impending disaster or storm. For example, the last time we had a tropical storm warning, about 4 months ago, right? It probably 3 or 4 months ago. It wasn't too far back.
Yeah.
But
when the storm actually didn't hit as how we might have expected it to be.
The storm didn't hit at all.
Some areas were affected. Some areas were affected.
It passed in between Trinidad and Tobago, and I was like, Trinidad is so bad, even the storm doesn't want to come. But that happened. Everybody was expecting this. First time we're under a tropical storm. It wasn't even a warning. A tropical storm is going to hit us. Everybody be prepared. Everybody was panic buying.
Technically, it did hit the North Coast.
Well, okay, the North Coast. Fine, fair enough. So after all that, people said, you know what, this always happens. A hurricane was supposed to hit us a couple of years ago. It passed between Trinidad and Tobago. Hurricane was supposed to hit Trinidad. I remember years ago, it hit south and then just suddenly died. All that is taking place. Then last night again, you see a similar situation. Impending weather, inclement weather is coming. From what I understand, hurricane hunters were actually across Trinidad and Tobago last night. They actually saw tropical storm gusts at the center of this tropical wave. And again, nothing happened. So all of this adds to my questioning, is it that we take these things seriously, or is it that are we always going to have a level of unpreparedness simply because we seem to not be affected by any of these systems at all.
It's natural human behavior to not be prepared for something that you think most likely won't happen. Right? New Orleans didn't expect Katrina to happen. That's why they were unprepared. Usually when you have these sorts of natural disasters, in some cases it is a 1 in a million thing that you literally would have a hard time justifying preparing for because you're taken by surprise. It's not something that's in the history that has really had any reasonable probability of happening. Even a slight probability, it's so far off your radar. But in TNT's case, what happens is we are accustomed to near misses. Right? But the problem with near misses is the probability of a hit is higher than low, is higher than 1 in a million. You know, it's reasonable to think at some point we're going to get hit hard, and we're going to be, why were we prepared? Part of the problem is, and we like to throw everything on the government, and we need to realize that a country is governed by those who are elected by the people, who express the will of the people. And to some extent, what do we have now? We have every corner of the country demanding more money. So if I was the government, and I'm seeing all these near misses, right, and to the point where I roll out a ministerial team, and I'm going to get, unfortunately for them, right, but it looks like they wanted 15 minutes of any camera to look good. You're going to get pound for it. So then you're going to adopt the, well, why bother? Because part of it is because the people are demanding money for X, Y, and Z. This one wants pay raises, this one wants pay raises. Granted, of course, the cynics could say, well, if they just don't steal any money, we could use that money for all the other things we need to do. I don't necessarily think it's quite that simple, right? So we get complacent because there are demands, and it's easier to meet those demands and to tell people, well, you know what? In this time of economic need, we can't give you your pay raises because we need to make sure that we have enough money in reserve in case an emergency happens, right? And anytime you have a complicated scenario like this, more often than not, the public has a hard time of accepting it. But then that goes into now politicians, for whatever reason, aren't really effectively communicating. So because they don't communicate effectively, that's part of the reason why the public has a hard time accepting, let's put money aside for emergencies. What's the need for it? You know, even when we do have the emergencies, they don't effectively communicate the need so that they could explain to people, hey, look at what's going on here, look at what's going on there. They pick low-hanging fruits, and they use buzzwords, and they use things that are easy to communicate because it's lazy, but it doesn't always properly set things up for the future. There's no long-term thinking or planning in the communication. It's all about how do I appease the people now. That's why the money goes to where it's easiest, where it's most popular for these short-term transfers and subsidies. So, you know, with regards to disaster preparedness, it's just not going to be popular. If we were a country like that experienced every year without fail something, then it'll be different. Right? But then it'll be easy for them. It's easy for any government to do that, to just point to last year and say, well, you know, we had $2 billion in damages, we need to be ready for that this year. Right? So because we don't have an easy way out, it's easier to just be complacent and say, you know, let's spend all the money for other things that will get us reelected. And if there's an emergency, hopefully we won't be in power when that happens.
You see that? Well, because you see that level of complacency that you're speaking of, it's absolutely right. It certainly exists. I agree with you on that. But it's that same complacency that leads to disaster, yes, or exacerbates the disaster further.
That's how you right? Get a lot of the disasters like Katrina.
Right, because of that level of unpreparedness. Now, Katrina is a good example because it was completely unexpected. It's also a very difficult example because it was completely unexpected. It was that weather system. Think about it. Look at New Orleans on the map, and look at the fact that a hurricane hit there. That was rather peculiar.
The key is, right, it's not like the hurricane bypassed Florida and whatever and hit some city on the west side of Texas, you know, on the east side of California or what have you. We know hurricanes. The world knows, the Western Hemisphere knows, hurricanes goes from the Lesser Antilles up. Normally it goes around the Florida area, and it might hit the East Coast. It's not outside of the realm of possibility that it's going to veer left and it's going to hit New Orleans, right? So if it could veer left and hit New Orleans, then the hurricane that usually goes by Grenada, Barbados, what have you, our neighbors are not that far. The airplane ride to get there is not that long. I don't even think it's an hour. It's not hard to think it might veer, one of these days, something might veer left just a little bit, and hey, climate change, we don't know what the weather patterns are going to change to.
I wanted to speak about, maybe we could speak about that a little later, where you mentioned, I guess, budgeting and allocations. You mentioned measures such as transfers and subsidies. And I think something that we could focus on a bit later on, because we do have the budget statement that is due to be read by the Minister of Finance on Monday.
Yes.
And you made a point where everybody wants money, everybody's calling for money. I mean, as I mentioned before, every person in Trinidad and Tobago, including government ministers, wants a salary increase for whatever reason, you know. But
a salary increase? An MP just bought, anyway, whether legally or not, he bought it. That's not in doubt.
But and bear in mind, I got a document listing the tax exemptions of ministers and members of parliament, and it will shock you when I read that information. But let's not get too far into that. You see, we need to have that discussion over transfers and subsidies, as well as expenditure, because what I've realized is that this is probably due to, again, unfortunate circumstances, but this is probably Colm Imbert's one of his better years that he's been Minister of Finance in terms of income, right?
Okay. Oh, okay.
By no means of the government's doing. It's unfortunate circumstances, but it has been. The question is now, how is Colm Imbert going to balance his budget to the extent that, okay, we're able to pay off debts, right? We're not going to pay it all off, but we're allocating money to ensure that we're able to do that, and we don't have to take loans in order to pay off loans. We're going to have money to cover recurring expenditure, which is always the case. But I also need to figure out where is it and how is it I'm going to allocate for income generating avenues. That is key.
I suspect that the fallout of the pandemic and the war in Ukraine and the extra cost it's going to cost to rebuild, loan financing for governments might be a little bit harder, a little bit more scrutiny. The interest rates might go up a little bit more. The expectations that a country will almost never default, well, never default is probably gone, because I think one or two countries have already started to default.
Well,
outside of Russia,
Greece
and that
is the biggest example. Sri Lanka is also an example of that.
But just to take it further, so other countries, of course, could be complacent with budgeting for emergencies. But in our country, to what extent do we have to ask, given the high level of violence, are we complacent with budgeting to our criminal justice system? Not just the TTPS, the cries and the lamentations of the Office of the DPP, which only have now recently been started to be addressed with the AG sending, I believe, more staff there.
Well, they're actually fighting off the DPPs in the papers today.
Right. So now, locally, while some of the complacency we have seen elsewhere, it's human nature, it's not unique to TNT, with regards to certain aspects of industries that need development or serve critical services that need improvement. To what extent is the government complacent? Well, crime is crime, and I don't necessarily want to deal with it, and I don't want to close all the loopholes, and I don't have the political will to tell customs that they have to do their job, and to tell the coast, and to find money for the Coast Guard boats to have fuel. Nah, I good.
Sean, bear in mind, again, it all boils down to one thing: recurrent expenditure. That's what I just mentioned. Governments, past and present, and particularly with Colm Imbert, they've been able to cover recurrent expenditure. If you listen to his budget statements in the past and you analyze it, ask what has happened then, and ask what revenue generating avenues has this government really implemented. Recurrent expenditure, transfers and subsidies, that's not going to generate money.
No.
That's just going to give away money.
No, but the cost of failures might be chipping away at our revenue generation, because the private sector,
it is,
the violence, the ease of doing business.
It is. Anyway, folks, let's take a quick break here on the program. When we return this morning, well, did you know, I'm sure you know, that teachers have decided to not attend school for the morning period. They're due to actually head out for the afternoon period, but it's all in response to what they call disrespect towards them, as negotiations have stalled over wage increases. We'll be right back after this.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best birthday gifts are at thebesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
AM Prime on WESN, the only place from 6 to 7:30 a.m. where you can get the most analytical and thorough interviews and regional reports.
The Barbados Labour Party, led by the Prime Minister Mia Amor-Motley, once again able to achieve a clean sweep in yesterday's general election.
I think a lot of people have underestimated the power
of Tobago nationalism.
If the government is afraid to say it, I, Martin George, I am saying it this morning on your show, Andy. There will be no carnival before Ash Wednesday.
Grab a cup of coffee and start your day right watching AM Prime with Andy Johnson weekdays from 6 a.m. Only on your content capital, WESN.
Chantwell Vibes, a musical tribute to Andre Tanker, Saturday, September 24th, 2022, Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m. Featuring Three Canal, Mavis John, Ataclan, Empress Ajay, Stacy Sobers, and panist Natasha Joseph. Tickets $300. Available at Crosby's Music Center, St. James. Extra Foods, Arima, Grand Bazaar, and Endeavour. Online at Island E-Tickets. Committee members at 678-2843 or 482-3111. Central Bank box office on the day of the event. Mart's Liquor Palace, Diego Martin Main Road, La Puerta. A musical tribute to Andre Tanker. Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. Now, teachers are taking action this morning, as is ordered by their representative union, Tutor, over what they are saying is disrespect that is being shown towards them by the Chief Personnel Officer. This, as negotiations, it seems to have stalled. It's broken down as no negotiations are taking place, according to Tutor. They said that they are still willing to negotiate. However, there is nothing from the CPO at this time other than the final offer, which remains in place for quite some time now. That offer of 4% over a three-term bargaining period. So with all that, Tutor has decided that enough is enough. We're going to take further action. And as we spoke to Braden Roberts a couple of weeks ago, he mentioned that, listen, we need to wait and see what's taking place before we take further action. Since then, nothing has happened, and I suppose this is what teachers are doing. Now, I completely understand and I respect teachers in the sense that, listen, if they are being disrespected, if there's no negotiations at all, I get that. And I agree that they need to take some form of actions. Where I actually feel who are really suffering because of this, parents are sending their children to school. Children do not have teachers. They cannot get through their lessons. One day lost within the education system is a whole lesson lost in some instances. It's very difficult, actually, and in many times I've been in that position. I know that especially when you have exams coming up, be it CSEC exams, SCA exams, CAPE exams, that is a struggle. So overall, something needs to be done soon. This situation needs to be resolved, because I disagree with the fact that the CPO has remained silent, and that's according to Tutor, and yet I'm not entirely in agreement with Tutor's actions, though I do understand the position of which they state, which they allege is what they're in. So, for comments now, my co-host is alongside me. You've listened to me ramble for a little bit, but I am frustrated. I'm frustrated because of a lack of negotiations, and again, I don't know. To me, it seems as though students are being used as pawns.
Whose fault is the lack of negotiation?
According to Tutor, the CPO's fault.
My only problem is, right, think about, I tend to take my hardest stances on what the people themselves say. I didn't judge the former AG by what anybody else said about him. I didn't judge Watson Duke in this situation with Farley about what anybody else had to say about him. Maybe what other people had to say about his statements in the situation, but not just any accusations in the tit for tat, right? And in this situation, with regards to the unions, I'm not taking what the politicians are saying. I'm not taking what the Public Service Commission is saying. I'm taking their own statements. And their own statements basically says, we want more money. We want more money, we want more money, we want more money, we want more money, we want more money. More money. Too much work, we want more money. Private sector jobs have taken pay cuts, right? Look at the situation that we have here with the robbery. These are not gangsters who are drug dealers, who, you know, they're desperate for money, or people who lost their jobs, who are desperate to feed themselves and their family. Some of the people involved actually had jobs.
Well, hold on. If I may just interject, whilst I understand what you're saying in relation to more money, and I think we agree on that.
But when they are private sector jobs, and we've heard of private sector jobs having pay cuts.
No, but again, I understand that. I completely understand that. I agree with you. I've stated that before. Everybody wants more money. The issue is, doesn't tutor have a point? And I can't believe that I am stating this, given all of tutor's ramblings, but doesn't tutor have a point at the fact that they're stating they are willing to negotiate? It doesn't necessarily have to be an increase in salary, but we have to look at other areas of which teachers could benefit from as well. At least meet with us to negotiate, because according to them, this is not negotiations. It's not negotiations if you're not willing to meet and discuss. That is tutor's position. Don't they actually have a point in that instance? Because I see what they're saying. Well, that's ironic as it is. I see what they're saying. But I mean, come on.
Well, yeah, so literally, no, you can't, Keaton. You cannot actually see the
cannot
words
see what they're
coming
saying.
out of their mouth.
I can't.
But also, no, I don't see what they're saying, because it's only now, and it reeks to me of what happened with Petrotrin, where you demand something from the government, and the government, you know, keeps trying until eventually time has passed, and then you realize, oh wait, my demands, it seems like they can't meet it, because usually the government caves to this pressure, right? So we're going nowhere. So let's step down on the demands, right? It's only because the previous attempts at strong-arming and blackmailing the government using our nation's children as leverage, right? Twice within the last year. That's why I don't really believe anything they have to say. Not because of what government says or because anybody else says, but because of what they said. They just said money. Everything was about money. Nothing about reopening schools, about COVID, and about the rest and relaxation had to do about the welfare of the children.
Well, with us now, I think with us, Sean, I think our guest is with us, right?
Yes, and I think our guest heard me, and I don't know. Well, Mr. Clarence Mendoza, he is the president of the Concerned Parents Movement, if I'm correct. Good morning, sir. I don't know if you're muted. You might need to unmute yourself.
All right, Mr. Mendoza.
Check your mute on Zoom.
I can see what you're saying, but I can't hear what you're saying, sir. I think you have to unmute yourself.
Yes, there we go.
I said I'm hearing you guys, and say pleasant good morning to everyone, your viewing audience, your listening audience, those are hearing impaired. Conversation is very fruitful, and Concerned Parent Movement take a real notion to this morning here for the past few years in terms of our teachers having to take days rest and reflect just to prove a point. We are clearly making it clear this morning that the CPO should be coming out there and having regular discussions with our public servants, not just our teachers, but today we are discussing our teachers. And this should have been an ongoing discussion long before today, long before 2022 or 2020 as the case may be. So we are seeing where teachers has been owed monies for quite a long time. They reached to this position now, and the government, to put it in perspective, that the economy is bad and we can only give you 4%. It's ridiculous at this point in time.
Well, Mr. Mendoza, so we have an understanding that you, as well as the Concerned Parents Movement, agree that the CPO should meet with tutor or any unions in terms of negotiating. Could you hear me, sir?
I'm hearing you low.
All right, okay, so hopefully you hear me a bit louder in a minute, but as I was saying, we understand that you know, the movement agrees that the CPO needs to meet with tutor and other unions to continue negotiations. However, does the movement agree with the calls from tutor, for example, the first day of school, the new academic year, to stay home, rest and reflect, as well as today, to stay in and come out only for half day? What is the movement's position in relation to the calls from tutors and the actions of teachers?
Well, at this point in time, the movement back tutor 100% in the deliberation, and we are really asking for the CPO to really sit down and have discussion. It makes no sense that the CPO go into hiding and wait till the budget is read to really come out and say, well, we'll give you 5% or 4.5%. And we are saying again, the CPO position should have been taking place a long time ago, not at this last minute. Our teachers has been out there through the COVID pandemic, along with other members of the public service. They have been out there, and I think some redress should be given to them, even if it's a bonus for the time being. Say, look, we're going to give you something for the time being, but we cannot afford to give you a 10% right now, but we'll give you 4 and something. Say something. Have a discussion.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Mendoza, my only thing is I am not entirely sure. It never seemed to me that any union was more or less willing to talk about anything else besides salary increases. Maybe that's a wrong assumption on my part, but I have never really heard of any other working condition, any other factor being presented by the unions. Now, technically, tutor did say when they had online classes, they wanted, it was their internet and their devices, so they wanted the state to supply those things. But that kind of almost directly translates to money. It's not about, because it would be services and devices that would be in their personal possession. We're not talking about the conditions of the school or the conditions of the classrooms, right? So I have never really heard of any sort of alternatives. That's more or less what happened with Petrotrin. That's more or less one of the last incendiary things Watson Duke said when he was president of the PSA. It was all about keeping the jobs, all of the jobs, keeping the jobs pay level and increasing the salaries even if they were high-paying jobs. Now, I don't necessarily think teachers are high-paying. So, I mean, is it fair for me now to not necessarily think that the union is necessarily acting in good faith? I get what you're saying about the CPO should still do their job, even if the union is not necessarily living up to their end. But do you understand where I'm coming from? Like, I'm kind of wary about tutor.
Yeah. Yeah, well, tutor and all is wary about with the Ministry of Education and where they are going, the CPO, where they are going with this. And, having discussions with tutor in the past, we have asked them the necessary question going forward. Coming into the pandemic, are they willing to work during the pandemic in such a manner for such a pay? And they couldn't answer the question. So they would have went into the pandemic teaching online our students without any discussion with the CPO. And we understand that, and our teachers are out there, and they are very into their students, so to speak. And we have teachers who really don't care, but that's another discussion.
Yeah.
But where it stands as is, tutor is standing for what's right. I know it's been some years. You can say 2014 since they have gotten any kind of increase or increment, as the case may be, and they are asking for it. And we are saying it should not have been 2022, it should have been 2015, 2016, where the CPO would have had that discussion, and even if it was 2% at the time, they would have gotten 2%. So it should not have reached the way we could only give you 4% now. We understand the economy is very bad, so to speak, but we still seeing that the government of Trinidad and Tobago is spending money wantless. I don't want to say wastelessly, but on matters that is not as critical as the education of our students.
Well, Mr. Mendoza, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think on the 3rd of September, you're quoted as stating, if I may read the quote for you, if your cost of living today is the same as in 2001, then you're really hungry, and we know that teachers will stay away, but staying away wouldn't have helped the situation as it is, whether it's 4%, 1%, or 15%. Staying away from school to rest and reflect, I don't think it will help our students, and we are seeing what has happened to our students during the last 2 years. there seems to be as I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm getting the impression there's a change in sentiment to what you would have expressed 19 days ago.
Well, I don't think the concerned parent movement would have made any statement in that line. We know that 2001, 2005, the country was in an economic boom, and finances were there. So if the cost of living is still the same today as it was in 2001, we can clearly see where the market value is. We can clearly see the value of the US dollar here in Trinidad and Tobago where it is today. We can clearly see that, and we can clearly see in the grocery prices what's happening. So it's all around effect for everyone, not only Trinidad and Tobago, but around the world. But measures were put in place in other countries, and I think we should have had measures in place by having discussions earlier. We passed that stage. Here we are today at the front door, and teachers are saying they are more hungry now than ever.
No. Once I understand that, Mr. Mendoza, the part where I need clarification is that once you said you stand with tutor, when tutor was threatening to boycott classes at the beginning of the academic year, which they ended up doing, before that happened, you said staying away from school to rest and reflect. You don't think it will help our students, and we are seeing what has happened to our students during the last 2 years. But this morning you're stating that you support tutor, and tutor should do what is necessary.
That's correct. At this point in time, we are making it clear that we are standing with tutor, because we are seeing that the CPO is not coming forward to have any discussion, any mediation with tutor at this point in time. They need to have discussions. Discussions should be ongoing. Mediation should be ongoing. We cannot just sit back and have this continue in this manner in our country. We need to move forward.
Well, one of the things that disappoints me of the situation is the discussion, generally speaking. And I have already said I kind of blame the unions for this, but to be fair also, the government kind of just keeps it there as well. Although it's not up to them to bring it up necessarily. It stays on the money. Now, have you been working with tutor to perhaps maybe speak about the education system on a whole? Because it's all about the children. And I also have problems, as much as I disagree with the unions, and I make I'll be clear about that. I'm not saying the Ministry of Education, I think, is in a good place. And the whole system or the systems of our education seem to all be in problems, right? Besides the management of the facilities, we now see that they are changing the how assessment will be. They're no longer administering national tests to students for certain years in primary school. And while the change might end up being good, from what I understand, outside of the COVID years, it was almost as though there was changes to the syllabus every year. There's questions if the teachers could keep up with all of these changes. Has the concerned parent movement perhaps spoken to tutor, tried to go to the Ministry of Education and say, hey, what are you all doing? Can we get some stability and not just have changes for the sake of change that's disrupting teaching from a year-to-year basis?
I'm barely hearing you. I got some of your deliberation, your questions in there, and my whole take on this that of the concerned parent movement is that the Ministry of Education at this point in time, they are really trying to catch up, and being a ministry trying to catch up right now with the system as it is, it's very hard for them. We can understand that. We have seen where the bookless was an issue. We have been trying to get that out of the way for quite a while. And we have seen where they have made amends and give 2022 to 2024, 23, I want to believe, in terms of bringing that up to par, and also trying to introduce the e-book system as we speak.
Yes.
Pardon me?
Yes.
Yeah, all that is great. And we applaud them for that. Parents applaud them for taking the textbooks for the next 2 to 3 years, per se. But in terms of the ebook, we know they are still working on the logistics. And we are making it clear that if we are going to go to the ebooks at some point in time, we must raise the standard of our students, internet access, so forth, our laptops that the ministry would have handed out to our students, and iPads. Those things I don't think they could stand the test of going to ebook for our students coming in 2020, between 2022 and 2027, which they would have laid out. So we are really asking the Ministry of Education to look closely, take consideration into putting some type of discount measures for our students who would be using the internet connectivity. And that is something that we will look at. And also, we know that the budget is coming up, and the Ministry of Education really supposed to get the brunt of the budget, which they never do. But I think education in terms of school repairs and so forth should be top in the agenda going forward.
Mr. Mendoza, I'm a bit curious. Forgive me if I'm going slightly off topic, because you mentioned the Ministry of Education, and I'm sorry if you're not hearing me too clearly.
I'm hearing you.
Yeah. But as you mentioned, that we're in a transition phase. The Ministry of Education has a lot of work on its hands. It needs to review the current education system. I'm all in agreement for that. But is there also a sense, or is there any sort of position from the Concerned Parents movement as it regards to education within the household? Because I'm coming from the point that, listen, sending your child to school is one thing, but education within the household as well. I think we've lost that here in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did, and I can vouch for that myself. Being a parent myself, and having to assist my child over the years with his work was a challenge for me. The fact remained that every term, a book list would have come out, a new book would have come out, and the challenge was to keep up with these new books. I'm not sitting in the classroom. Now, if I were to follow like my parents did with a book for 5 years, I'll be versed at it to work with my children. It's not only the price of the book, but the parent being the one working with the child with those books, even if it's for 3 years and you have 5 children in your household, or 3 as the case may be, you would be versed with the book. Your brothers and sisters will be able to help your siblings with the book. But when the books keep changing every 6 months, it's a problem for parents and even their siblings to assist them going forward. And that's a challenge we have. We also have parents that never graduated school, and we're seeing more and more of it now. Parents that never graduated, they make it to Form 3, Form 2, some drop out. They have children, they have challenges. So most of them cannot read. And it's something that the literacy in Trinidad and Tobago has lost its standard, lost its way, and we need to get it back up there to where our parents can really function and read it and so forth. When we talk about our children coming out of primary, going into secondary school, coming out of secondary school and cannot even fill out an application or fill out a receipt, so forth. It's sad. It's sad. It's really sad at this point in time. But parents need to step up to the plate and really get some type of literacy, some type of knowledge. Because if we are going to e-books and they cannot even control their cell phone, we are in trouble as parents.
Well, Mr. Mendoza, I hear you and I agree with you. In fact, I remember when I was in secondary school, we often spoke to our teachers and we said, it's amazing that in our education system, even a simple thing like how to apply for a loan, it's not often even taught. Everyday life lessons is not taught in school. But I agree with you, Mr. Mendoza. But beyond just the textbooks, beyond just the mathematics, the English, the literature, the history, beyond that, let's look at it from the other angle. I'm talking about life lessons and education as well within the household, because you send your child to school, make sure you learn your book. That's always the line. But then when we see the mentality and the attitude of some students, and it comes from within a household as well, we're failing there as well. So as much as we are blaming an education system, which it honestly has many, many faults, why is it that education from within the household seems to, like, there's no care anymore to establish that education system within the household first, not beyond books? There's a heavy reliance within the classroom.
Yes. And again, the concerned parents movement, we had discussions on this many times before in the past. We had discussions on the same topic. And again, we must look at the denominational schools and the government schools, the government-run schools. And we are seeing where the government schools are failed miserably in terms of discipline. We have seen where the denominational schools control their discipline, has more discipline, more order, more what should I say, more religious belief. Whether you are Presbyterian or Catholic or Anglican and you go into such school, you have some type of worship, you have some type of spirituality within your life. The government schools don't have that anymore. They've lost their way. You know, we go into a government school and it's pandemonium. There's no order. And we continue to say that, hey, let's go back to denominational boards running all our schools. You know, if that's what we have to go, if the government have to give up their government schools to denominational boards to run it, let's do that. Something has to work. And we are seeing where the denominational boards are really working harder in putting children first. We can see that. We're not going to hide behind the curtain and say, no, we are doing just great with our government schools. Waste of time, man. That's not happening. Spirituality is out the door. You go to a Presbyterian school, is order. All the parents come out to PTA meetings. You go to a government school, you get 5 parents coming out to a meeting. And it's yet to be seen over the years. It's not happening now. So we need to get back there to the ground and have that discussion to where spirituality must be part of our children's life. We have seen where the household has lost it. We have seen that. We have seen the crime rate has escalated. And we are only looking to put more guns in our police hands instead of dealing with it from the grassroots, from our young children, age 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's where we need it. You know, and we are seeing it's getting worse and worse, and nothing is being done in that angle. So the denominational boards, I give them thumbs up for what they are doing.
Well, Mr. Mendoza, I was actually going to ask you before those statements about what do you think the Ministry of Education needs to do to catch up, because you said that education is behind, right? And you outlined several ways where you believe it's behind. Is moving things to a mostly or all denominational run education system, you think, the way to go, or is there anything else you would like to see to get the education system back on track?
Yes. In our government schools and some of the students within our denominational schools, we wouldn't say they are all perfect. But when a child gets 5 days suspension, 6 days the minister would move them from that school, as the case may be. Suspension for our children here in Trinidad and Tobago don't work. They like that. They actually try to get 5 days off so they can go and do whatever miserable crime they want to commit, whether it's a crime or whatever. They tell you that. And until you can speak to the children on the ground, then you understand what's really happening within that sector. You know, they are controlling the narrative, and the government, the ministry, as the case may be, is just trying to catch up as they move along. And to solve something like this, we must have truancy officers put in place. We cannot be using our police service to come out to schools or to track down children. We must put that in place. Absenteeism is a big thing in our school system, whether it's teachers or students, but we are dealing with students. And absenteeism is a big thing. And if students can stay home when they want, laze around when they want, because parental guidance is none and void, it's zero. Grandparents are there, zero. They're doing what they want. Come to school when they want. Frustrate the teachers when they want. And nothing is being done about it but giving you a 5-day suspension. It's not working for me at all. I think in-house suspension should be something that we should look at, to where the child come to school. If you are coming for 8, you come from 9, and you come from 9 to 2, and you are dropped off by your parent or guardian and picked up at the case may be. If you are not in school by 9 a.m., I think a truancy officer should be visiting your home, not National Family Services. Truancy officers is something that works in North America, and I think it should be put in place here, to where our students acting up as the way they're acting up now should be dealt with at the home level. Who is going to the home to visit these homes to see what's really taking place at the home? No one is going. National Family Services goes up, but they're under threat too. Police, community police is going out, but Nobody wants to speak to the community police. Let's be real. If I'm a child and I'm that miserable, I don't want to see you. I will quicker speak to the guidance officer and have a discussion. But I'm saying again, truancy officers, just like we have traffic wardens, truancy officers should be put in place. The system should be mechanized to where if your child don't show up for school by 9, 10 a.m., they can make contact with that parent, make contact with that home, visit that home, see what's the issue, what's the challenge. Is it something happening at home? What's going on in the home? And we are not doing that.
Well, Mr. Mendoza, with the time we have left, very controversial question, but do you believe that in two parts, one, with the removal of corporal punishment, that students seems to have gotten away a bit more, that level of discipline within the schools dropped? Do you think that corporal punishment is, bringing that back? I mean, I don't even know where to begin in terms of reinstituting that. But do you think if they were to bring that will help the situation as it relates to discipline within schools?
No, it wouldn't. Bringing corporal punishment back into the school system wouldn't. It will just escalate the situation. Our children are out of control now. They are threatening teachers. You see, one teacher in the south area here would threaten and cannot even venture into the classroom. So to bring back corporal punishment to our students, it's a no-no. It's the past. We should look at other avenues. The disciplinary matrix is really just a matrix. It really does not do anything because the children is aware of the law. And until we understand that children understand their rights and they teach others as they move along within the school system, we will understand that what's happening is not a grown adult situation. We've seen from our primary school where our students and they are bullying younger students that come into the school. And it teaches the younger ones. So when they reach standard 4 or 5, they are already trained. When they go into the secondary school, the Form 2s and 3s are bullying the Form 1s, and they are being trained to bully when they get into Form 4 and 3s, as the case may be. And we must look at the system. I had conversation with the ministry in the past on such, where students are selling the box lunch. Not their own, they are controlling the narrative. They control the narrative to sell a box lunch for $10. So if the ministry don't know that, they didn't know at the time, they know now, and nothing has been done about it, more than to decrease the number of box lunches. It's the same scenario. They are ahead, and they will continue to be ahead unless we put stringent measures in place.
Mr. Mendoza, I know that this conversation started off with tutors' actions and wage negotiations, but I have to admit, I appreciate to the extent of which we were able to have a conversation, and I wish we had more time to continue it over our education system. But thank you for your time this morning, sir, and for sharing with us your position and the position of the movement. And I look forward to future conversations, a continued discussion.
One thing before you close, I want to put it out there that the Concerned Parent Movement will continue to ask and reach out there that our parents must now be held accountable in some which form for their children action. And it's something that we have in North America, and we need to put that in place in Trinidad. Some parents been ducking from it. When I make this mention here 4 or 5 years ago, I said it in the ministry, and I'm saying it again. Until we can put our parents to the metal, then we can see some type of changes. Our parents need to be held accountable. They are going too wayward and letting their children control the narrative within the household. So we need to put something in place. Something, whether you're in uniform, whether you have to be home by 6 off the streets, some type of measures must be put in place. And that discussion should go to the United Nations, so we can look at the United Nations, the rights of the child, and increasing the benefits of our parents and guardians.
Well, Mr. Mendoza, Mr. Mendoza, I wish I could, elaborate a bit further on that conversation with you, but unfortunately we're going to have to end it there. But thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Have a good day.
Thank you, guys.
Good conversation. Hope for good news from the budget for our schools.
Yes. Thank you. Have a pleasant day.
You too. Mr. Karen Mendoza of the Concerned Parents Movement. Folks, we take a break here for WSN's News on the Hour. When we return, we open up the phone lines. We continue that discussion a bit further.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. San Fernando Business Chamber calls for more detection at ports. Adverse weather alert remains in effect. 14 tested for monkeypox. And internationally, chopped body parts found in multiple suitcases in New York apartment. Now for the details. Greater San Fernando Business Chamber President Kiran Singh is calling for more detection at the nation's ports to prevent the importation of illegal guns. Speaking with TV6 in the aftermath of the deadly Pennywise robbery, Mr. Singh says someone in authority must be aware of what is happening and the TTPS needs to act in a bid to prevent a recurrence of that incident.
The ports need to be more secure. The customs, instead of running on business people to charge them for a barrel of goods that they bring to sell and bring for their families, should we look into how do we detect all these arms? There was a couple of recent finds by the police of significant arms in warehouses and bonds that guarded by customs. And we didn't hear anything further after the fact of where did these guns come from. There's a paper trail. Somebody must have bought it.
Mr. Singh also weighed in on the parenting style in the country and advised persons to take stock of the youths.
When we hear rumors about, was it a mother of one of the bandits that was involved, whether that is true or not true, how do we engage in a conversation like that? It's very worrying for us as a society.
An adverse weather alert will remain in effect until 8 tonight. The Met Office says that showers and isolated thunderstorms associated with an active tropical wave continue to affect Trinidad and Tobago and surrounding waters. While the intensity of the weather will fluctuate, an increase in activity is expected this morning in some areas, with rainfall being heavy, torrential at times. The system has a high potential for further development over the next 2 days. Health Minister Terence Singh gave an update on the number of monkeypox tests performed thus far. He was speaking at Wednesday's Ministry of Health conference.
Currently it's 14, so there has not been any increase massive. It just increased by 1, and 14 samples were sent for testing, and all are negative to date.
In international news now, in a gruesome and horrific discovery, chopped body parts were found inside suitcases at a Brooklyn apartment on Wednesday afternoon, according to the New York police. According to the New York Post report, the police officers discovered the horrific incident around 1:30 p.m. They were called to 315 Linwood Street in East New York after a foul smell was reported in a home on the 6th floor. The neighbors complained that the 20-year-old woman who lived in the apartment had been missing for a number of days. Blood and human remains were reportedly discovered inside the apartment. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for watching.
Shantwell Vibes, a musical tribute to Andre Tanker, Saturday, September 24th, 2022, Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m. Featuring 3 Canal, Mavis John, Ataclan, Empress Ajay, Stacy Sobas, and panist Natasha Joseph. Tickets $300. Available at Crosby's Music Center, St. James. Extra Foods, Rima, Grand Bazaar, and Endeavour. Online at Island E-Tickets. Committee members at 678-2843 or 482-3111. Central Bank box office on the day of the event. Mart's Liquor Palace, Diego Martin Main Road, La Puerta. A musical tribute to Andre Tanker. Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Central Bank Auditorium. Showtime, 7:30 p.m.
You know, often we have guests on this program, and we always have a set topic. We always know exactly what we want to speak about. And many a times, it so happens that we go out of the realms of that set topic, as is what transpired this morning on Talking Points when we welcomed the head of the Concerned Parents Movement, Mr. Clarence Mendoza. And I have to say, it was a conversation I thoroughly enjoyed, and a conversation that I'm glad we went out the realms of the agreed topic, because certainly it goes to show that there's so many avenues of the education system which needs to be fixed, including within the household.
Yes, yes. But I think a lot of what he came back down to was discipline, and he spoke about it in multiple avenues. So if you had difficulty keeping up, you might actually think maybe he's contradicting himself a little bit, but that's not the case. The case is he's seeing it from many different sides. He's saying the students, they have their part to play, where they are being allowed to almost run amok in some cases, hence the need for in-school suspensions or truancy officers. But then the parents have to be held accountable in some cases because they're not doing their part, right? But then the schools also have to be held accountable in some cases because they're not doing their part. So he's looking at all three factors that are directly contributing, and he's not saying more police because, and he's right, when you police and they are supposed to be the escalation, right? That's almost the final step when you can't deal with it. If you can't deal with it on an everyday level, then you have to admit that it's out of control. And besides the truancy officer suggestion, as much as that's more strain on the budget, the concept of parents being held accountable for their children's actions, I think on some level legally, that's something that we really need to look at properly, because while they're minors, yes, it's not as though the parents of a 18-year-old, well, a 70-year-old could literally be next to them 24 hours a day. On the flip side, it's the parents who are the guardian, who has the legal responsibility, who has that power of attorney, you could say. So somebody has to be held responsible when a 16, 17-year-old does something serious, does something extreme that is unacceptable. And if the law says there's only so much we could do to the child, well, the person responsible, the child has to, at the very least, because they're the most responsible for the child ending up in the manner the child ends up.
I also enjoyed, which ties in to a certain extent of what you're speaking of, that debate about a denominational school versus a government school.
Yeah, that's a controversial
You know when
topic.
he said that I think in some instances you should have denominational boards running government schools. It's a wonderful debate that we could have sometime, and certainly I think maybe we could have that conversation with Kemuel too when he joins us.
Yes.
So, but for now, let's open up the phone lines. The phone lines are open. The numbers are on your screen. Call in and join us in Talking Point. Your opinions matter. And we do have a caller already on the line with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
You know, I couldn't wait to call in. I couldn't wait to call in after this Mr. Mendoza spoke. And this is a critique I'm going to give you all here of what I witnessed just now there. And this is my opinion. All what Mr. Mendoza spoke about, both of you and a lot of us spoke of on this program already. We know all those issues. What I was hoping for is to find out from Mr. Mendoza, what is this association doing, because it's concerned parents. I wanted to find out more about this Concerned Parents Association and what are they doing to try and help mitigate the issue, all those issues that he spoke about. He spoke about what are the problems. I heard no form of, this is what we're trying to do, this is what we're trying to get the parents out. Because to be quite honest, gentlemen, I have 2 children in university right now, and I have 1 in secondary school. And I have been attending myriads of PTA meetings over the years. And I have never heard of this association. I know about the NPTA, but I have never heard of them. And I still have a child in secondary school. And of course, Mr. Mendoza comes with some issues, with some thoughts of putting some stuff in place in the U.S. system, which in large measure has failed. Because I deal with teachers in the U.S. as well. I have friends who are teachers in the U.S. And that's what he's talking about, that intervention. That has failed in the public school system in the U.S. So I hope you all could get him back and let him explain this association, the membership, how to get in. I would like to know that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
The one thing I'll say is I think how their system is failing and how our system is failing, I don't know if it's the same way. Some of the things are similar with regards to the eventuality of kids that see little opportunity turning towards gangs and crimes. I think that might be similar. But some of these situations and factors aren't the same, because I do believe there are laws against children not attending school to some extent that are different to how our requirements are here. So there are some differences. I understand what he's saying though. But I do think your point about denominational versus government, that brings up, or that reveals some of the differences, and it might be a topic to spark debate.
Very quickly before we go to the next call, to the call from San Fernando, I hear your point and I understand what you're stating. And I think, yes, in that sense, we should have elaborated further on the Concerned Parents Movement and exactly what the organization is and what it does, you know, because it's all about information and education. So I understand what you're saying, I hear you, and certainly will bear that in mind in the future. Sorry if we didn't get too much into that this morning, but thank you for the critique. Constructive criticism is always welcomed. We have a caller on the line with us from Claxton Bay. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, hi, good morning, Keaton and Small.
Good morning.
Morning.
You see, you all talk about that word discipline. That is gonna, if we had keep up that kind of productive behavior, we would have learned to respect everybody. I could watch both of you on TV there and I could say, you see, Keaton and Sean, there is two disciplined persons. You understand? And that automatically will bring respect. You understand? Respect. I would want to respect my fellow brother and sister. But we allow all these things to go out the door. Watch at the parliament. You could be in the highest office and call people jackasses and all this nonsense, and you expect the children down here to do better? We mash up the society. That's what we do. And we allow these things to just go on without dealing with it. Now it turned a monster in our face, and this is what we gain. So we had to bring back all these things, and the home had to start doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you very much. No, go ahead.
Well, just one thing. I agree with your statements, except we have to be careful with the language that we use on air. We didn't cut you, but just an advisement to all callers, such language, especially if used in a malicious way, will just lead to an automatic cut. In this case, it's still not something that we should agree with to be said.
Well, caller,
but I agree with what your sentiments.
Yeah, we don't encourage that, but I know it didn't come from a malicious point, and so your point is received. You know, as Sean mentioned, just bear in mind going forward. But your call wasn't malicious. We just don't encourage that. However, you see that thing about that thing about respect. You know, they say respect is earned. We forget about that. You see, people think, you know, in order for me to respect you, you have to respect me, and I understand that. But even if you disrespect me, Sean, or even if I disrespect you, I will still, knowing what the right thing is, will always be respectful to you as a human being. I may not agree with you and I may not like you, but I will always respect you as a human being.
And in parliaments, for those that want to use international parliaments as an excuse, I don't know if there's enough respect. I don't have to agree with the person to respect them, as you pointed out.
Exactly. Caller on the line with us from Mayaro. Good morning, caller.
Good morning to Keaton and Sean.
Good morning.
It's a beautiful day, a wonderful day to have intelligence and to have a good day. You
Yeah,
see
have a
that
good
call?
day.
I will use that word and talk about discipline. Gentlemen, is a risk assessment of character to deploy characteristics. And Mr. Keaton always tell me I'm better than what I think I am. And that statement has empowered me to tell Mr. Keaton this morning that you are missed. And Sean was a little bit subtle with the position. It's a hot seat. He functions better with you alongside him. And it is clear to me. But I want to just say something. I would like to partner with you guys to let you know that risk assessment, critical thinking is important, because when the Prime Minister could say that the energy sector, we are pulling gases from a company who say we have in the pockets, and we yet not dealing with the response plan to facilitate the impact of what will take place in Mayaro for what is needed and required throughout the southern basin of this country, straight down to the western side. I am saying we need to reform and redo our policies. Gentlemen, we will create a bigger monster when the impact hits us of our emergency responder and emergency responders. I thank you for this opportunity. And Keaton, I applaud you, and Sean, you are respectful and respectfully remain with me in my eyes and my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you, caller. And we always appreciate your contribution and your opinion. It's good hearing from you. And we'll respond further after this call from Shagonas. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Professor.
I think I'm going to get all your callers and listeners vexed with me today, because I will be just repeating what I have said in response. All these problems is due to bad government. And the major one here is the government have destroyed the revenue base. They make no attempt to collect the revenue. That is why they cannot pay their workers. And then they have certain people claiming that public servants are lazy, this and the other, when the problem is really the people who are supposed to oversee them. The ministers don't do their work. And unless we have proper governance from the Prime Minister and his minister, we're going to have all this, not only the one you talk about, every problem that Trinidad have is for the same reason. Any questions, gentlemen, or do I go repeating this for the rest of the year?
Professor, you know, I must apologize, because if I were to ask you any questions, I might be repeating myself as well.
I will just say, I think what our other callers and what our guests remarked about discipline is just almost the same thing, maybe in a different way, as to what the professor says about law and order. And Professor, what you just said about not the people who have to manage or run things, it goes back down to that. Because it's not being done well, we lack law and order, we lack discipline, so the system falls apart.
It's only this. But Professor, if you're still with us? All right, I think, all right, Professor has gone. But I wanted to say I agree with you, because everything that you mentioned ties back into that word discipline. If there's no discipline at the highest level, what makes you think that those who are looking towards the higher level will actually understand or learn what discipline? Yeah.
If there's no respect at the higher level, if they can't even respect themselves, how would they respect the common people, right, who are not in the hallowed halls of Parliament?
But even so, well, hallowed people, you remember what I said I think it was last week, I probably said it, that how the most educated people, such as you could have the degree on your wall, you could have all these certificates, you could have a PhD or participation, this and that. These well-qualified individuals, they often are the ones that lack common sense and common principles of good behavior and best practice. Because I've always stated that you could read your book from back to front and know it better than the author. That doesn't make you that makes you maybe an educated individual, but it doesn't necessarily make you a smart individual.
Let's put it this way. I think, this is just a theory, those who get a piece of paper, a degree, a master's, because of what it represents because of the esteem, so they could get a bigger paycheck, literally just for that. I wonder to what extent those are the ones who tend to have less respect for other people, who tend to be a bit more superficial, as opposed to the doctor who wanted to be a doctor not for the paycheck, but for the calling or the vocation of it. The one who wanted to be a lawyer because they genuinely liked the law and wanted to see proper law being enforced, proper judgments to be carried out. They wanted to fight for clients, or they wanted to see justice be done as prosecutors. Police officers who are not police officers because it's, you know, of the power that it could give them in society, but who see a situation that needs fixing, and even if they're swimming against the current, they're going to continue to do so to ensure that the whole thing doesn't fall apart.
Well, and you made a very good point. People get into certain, they look at it as a career path that is going to be lined with golden bricks. That is a mentality. You know, I don't like this. I don't like this. But you know, my mom and dad told me that I will live a really good life. I could drive the fanciest car, have the biggest house, and could lime every weekend if I go down here. So I'm gonna get into it, but I don't really care for it.
But because consider, that's not necessarily dissimilar to those who just want a government work so they're set for life.
Right, but then the mentality as well is that I get into this field. Let's say doctors, lawyers, accountants, you know, those fields that everybody says the most prominent in terms of, you know, cha-ching, right?
Yeah.
So for a moment, let's look at that. People get into that field, and then I'm not saying this is the case for every individual within that particular field. I'm just stating there are those who unfortunately destroy their reputation because they become so arrogant. They want to talk down on you. They know better. You know, do you know who I am? Do you know who I know? This and that. It's like, okay, I'm better than the garbage man. Really? Fine. You take your garbage and you dump it in the beatum.
Yeah,
exactly.
You ride on the back of the truck.
I better than a teacher. All right, fine. You go to school as well and you teach your students, you know. I better than you. I better than he is. I better than she is. I know. Fine. No problem. You know, everybody serves a purpose. I better than the farmer because the farmer had to go out in the field and get mud every day on his shoes and whatnot. I can have nice polished shoes and whatnot. Fine. No problem. You don't eat food. Simple.
Oh yeah.
That mentality.
Yeah, where you get the food.
That mentality, that level of arrogance, even when you're getting into a profession, even when you're getting into that, that is all part of discipline and all part of a psyche and a mindset that needs to change.
A profession of service.
Sean.
I know.
Service is a word that is conveniently used in Trinidad and Tobago. Call on the line with us. Good morning.
Hi guys, good morning. Thank you, Bosh Keaton. I just missed that rant. I just want to mention the trouble with Katrina was that while it began as a natural disaster, even though it was a Category 3, it ended up as a man-made catastrophe because the levels broke, remember. New Orleans is low-lying, so these things are expected. So it was mainly because of the poor infrastructure, but as per usual, it was exacerbated because this was in the most impoverished African-American communities where hundreds of thousands of people did not evacuate because they lacked transport, because they hardened, they were old, sick people, and mostly there was the tardy federal response. So that is actually the apocalypse of Katrina. So here, we could rest assured, or, well, not assured, be terrified that a similar thing will occur here because poor infrastructure, unpreparedness for anything, coupled with a don't-give-a-damn, nonchalant population, that, you know, that can actually happen here if we are ever to be hit. And just one last thing on tutor. They've set such a high bar for children again that no wonder we are in this predicament that we are today. Thanks. And they call themselves, they're educators, you know, not teachers. They always say educators. So this is education in Trinidad and Tobago. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say, caller, I think the phrase you're looking for was, we could rest unassured.
Listen, in terms, you see the old school teacher? You see that old school, that teacher which will shout at you because that teacher believes in you, that teacher believes you wants the best for you. They shout at you.
They always
probably
believe in
get.
you?
Oh yeah, no. I talking about the real old school teacher, the teacher that cared about every student, and not just students that could benefit them in some way or the other because their parents is this or their parents is that. I talking about the real old school teacher. We have lost that kind of teacher in Trinidad and Tobago. No.
There's still some of them out there.
Okay, fine.
There's still some
of them out there who is probably on their way to retirement. Because I'm not just talking about the teacher that goes out the way and will use their own money or their own expense. My brother, I remember, my brother is now a qualified doctor, right? My brother had this teacher, this one particular teacher, when he was in secondary school. This teacher was fair. This teacher will rip up your labs, slam book and whatnot. But it was the same teacher that will sit down with you and explain to you, this is what you should do, this is what you need to go through, right? And if this teacher sees you making an effort, you may not get it right the second time, but if this teacher sees you making an effort, that teacher will have all the time in the world for you. We don't have those teachers anymore. We have educators. But anyway, some may disagree with me. That is my opinion, but that is also an experience.
I just like to say to the caller from San Fernando, I think one of the issues was we didn't necessarily speak too much about the education itself. So a lot of what we went into was the discipline. He did speak with regards to parents either having difficulty helping their kids with their work or not helping their kids with their work and not stepping up to the plate. He actually mentioned both sides of that coin. Again, if you're not careful, you might think he's waffling, but no, he's looking at both sides. But I think where the caller was right and where both the states and our system and a lot of systems in the West or even around the world, what we're teaching, how we're teaching it, the education itself. And this goes back to my concerns with the fact that the ministry changes syllabus every year. They change something in the syllabus. It reduces consistency and that reduces performance.
The syllabus?
Yes, the syllabus. I think that has a lot of our problems, both in the States and here, as you always say. You know, we're training them to take tests, not actually educating.
Very finally, as we wrap up to the last caller from Digicel, thank you to all our callers this morning for their contributions. San Fernando, Mayaro, Claxton Bay, thank you very much. But that caller from Digicel, you remember that it won Soka Monarch, I think Road March, what, the city will burn down, we jamming still?
Yeah.
Right? People might think, oh God, Keita, listen. That is just a joke. No, hold on.
I don't want to put it on the poor artists who had a good song.
No, hold on. No, it was a good song.
It was a good song.
But people like, oh, it was a joke. It was all in good fun.
We're not blaming all you for that song.
But think about it. That's the national anthem of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah,
the city will burn down. We jamming still. We are an indisciplined society. Tell me that I'm wrong. Come on, have that debate with me. I look forward to it from you. If you disagree with me, call me tomorrow and tell me.
Whenever you watch a political rally, you should go on YouTube and put that song and play in the background, whichever party you're watching, right? Just listen to that while they're speaking and you'll understand the irony.
Political party is right because you could have 10 murders and they're still jamming in the Ministry of National Security. But anyway, that's what
don't blame the artists. Don't blame the artists for the song.
Sean Michael Small, I enjoyed this morning's edition of Talking. I enjoy every morning of Talking Point, but some mornings it's just mentally draining. But I enjoyed that discussion this morning, all the contributions. Thank you very much, sir. You in the hot seat, so you know.
My seat is very cool. There was no sun this morning, you know. It's very cool. I could cool my drink on this cushion right now.
I wouldn't do that. I really wouldn't do that.
Well, no. That would be weird if you put your drink on my seat.
I wouldn't put anybody's drink.
That would be very weird.
Oh, no.
Let's not go there.
Don't put any drink.
Folks, I don't know what just happened at Talking Point, but we've gone into a realm that we're not supposed to.
Probably get plenty bubbles in
this is where we're supposed to break.
Anyway, listen, as ironic as it may be, just remember, today is a good day. Sean, tell them.
Well, today is a good day, hopefully to have a good day. Let's keep hope alive.
You sounded too hopeless. You sounded too hopeless. Today is a good day to have a good day.
There you go.
We'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN